Comes from Nicholas Cohn, Four Thoughts That Turn the Mind Toward Dharma. It is wise for us to contemplate that the quality of our life is fully determined by the quality of our behavior. Our thoughts, feelings, speech, and actions, virtuous and non-virtuous, create the intricate patterns of our life experience. We ourselves are the causes for our own happiness or our own suffering. When we understand the unwholesome, non-virtuous actions that cause suffering, we can eliminate those causes. When we understand the wholesome, virtuous actions that bring happiness and benefit to ourselves and others, we can cultivate those causes. We must begin by acknowledging that our situation in life is the result of our own actions. Karma and its results are certain and unfailing. Karma is the inevitable result that comes directly from specific causes. Positive actions of body, mind, speech will always bring the positive result of some form of happiness and benefit. Negative actions of body, speech, and mind will always bring the negative result of some form of suffering. Even a very small seed can grow into a very large tree. In the same way, just a small negative action can bring a large amount of suffering if it is not purified. And apparently, small and insignificant positive action can bring a great amount of happiness. A specific action leads to a specific result. Actions not engaged cannot bring results. By understanding karma, by purifying our decisions and by purifying our delusion and negativity, and by engaging in virtuous behavior, we change the entire course of our life experience and move swiftly toward liberation. If we use adversity as an opportunity for developing compassion, wisdom, love, the purification of our karma will be rapid and profound. Closely examine the karmic circumstances of your life. Consider deeply that there is a continuum, an interconnection between your present life, your previous life, and your future lives. Observe your thoughts, observe your present thoughts, feelings, speech, and actions. Use this observation as a precise indication of what you are creating for your future experience.
All right. So it is the second Sunday in Lent. Does anybody celebrate Lent in here? Do we have any recovering Catholics that just hear the word and kind of cringe? It's a lot of us. But I wanted to kind of take us, instead of doing a story for all ages, because we don't have any of our young guys, it is a story for all ages, and I wanted to go on a field trip today. All right. So I want you guys to take a deep breath, close your eyes, and we're going to enter the wilderness, the desert. And that's what Lent's about. Lent is this time when Jesus went into the wild and really just had a chance to be with himself and ran into a little guy we call Satan, but we won't get into that. So yeah, take a deep breath and exhale out and look around you. What do you see? Is it cacti and camel? Is it an oasis? Whatever it is, there's no distractions other than your present self. So as you start walking, I want you to just leave a little trail behind you so you can find your way out of breadcrumbs, but instead of breadcrumbs, just all the worries that you brought to service today. Just drop them one by one. As you walk into the wilderness, you get lighter and lighter as you go. Take another deep breath in. And exhale out. You can look back at all the burdens that you've left in your path. Wish them goodbye, farewell. You can return to them later if you so choose, but and just be present and still for a moment. And now slowly open your eyes. And that's what Lent is about. Lent isn't about giving up sugar or whatnot. That's why we have chocolate cake in the Unitarian division or denomination. We are anti-Lenters. But no, Lent is a time when we kind of separate ourselves from the things that are distracting. And that goes for all faith traditions. So yeah, just to separate ourselves from any of the stresses and strains and so forth that are keeping us away from our true spiritual higher power, and yeah, and just embracing it for 40 days. So hopefully you guys carry that with you as you leave today. And without further ado, we will jump into that whole sermon thing. It was shortly after seminary that I had one of my most influential biblical lessons to date, and opposed to the 1,000 or so odd-page concordances and lexicons that bogged me down throughout grad school, this particular epiphany came via a colorfully illustrated little children's Bible that leapt off the shelf of the Puerto Rican church that I was staying. I was hosting an off-the-wall Rev Ryan variety mission trip at the time that had my group and I volunteering at all the region's many animal shelters. So action was on our mind. And action is just what I read about when I flipped open that little children's book to the translation of the Gospel of John that we started today's service with. Now, Caroline opened today with an eloquent reading of the English rendition of that passage, but I want to read it to you again because, well, it's short and people's attention has a way of wandering during the chalice lighting. And that is for those of you that weren't wandering in yourself 5 minutes late for the service. But we won't judge, at least not on Sunday morning. Instead, regardless of why you might have missed it during the first read, I'm going to read it in our common vernacular once more. So listen up. This is important. Oh yes, and before I do, because we are open and accepting of all faith traditions in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, feel free to substitute your deity of choice when I speak of God from a Christian voice, as a Presbyterian Universalist mutt of a minister. And just it's kind of interesting, I can be a Presbyterian Unitarian, but I can't be a Unitarian Presbyterian. So kind of think of that. It just goes to show that, yeah, our acceptance kind of outpours over the other denominations. With that in mind, remember that you're being open and authentic about your unique beliefs doesn't silence your neighbor, but instead empowers them and invites them to be open and authentic about theirs. So always be proud enough of your faith to proclaim it in a non-proselytizing way. Now, in returning from that little rabbit hole, here it is, the opening passage from the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. It was with God in the beginning. Through it, all things were made. Without it, nothing was made that has been made. In the Word was life, and that life was the light of all humankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. It's a passage that many are familiar with, as was I that afternoon, but it wasn't until I read the Spanish translation in that beautiful little children's Bible that the passage truly bore meaning to me. Here goes. In el principio era el verbo, y el verbo era con Dios, y el verbo era Dios. Esta era en el principio con Dios. Eureka! That's it. That's a God that transcends religion, a God beyond a name, a God aligned with my faith. That's a God that's more than a proper noun, more than a word. That's a God that's a verb. In the beginning was El Verbo, and El Verbo was life, and that life was the light of humankind. God isn't merely a word or a name, and that is a good thing because Lord knows we can't seem to agree on one in the interfaith interactions that we have. Instead, God is a verb, an action. Elohim, Yahweh, Krishna, Allah, Adonai. None of those names mattered as of that instant because the divine energy of the universe and the light of life is beyond any name. Instead, God is an action word, a verb, and my ministerial career and personal life of faith would never be the same. We like action words in the social justice-minded Unitarian Universalist tradition. And why wouldn't we? Action is exciting, it's transformative, and it's invigorating. So what do? We sign petitions, we write letters, we join protests, we lead marches, we care for the sick and feed the poor, we stand behind warring nations, and we fight to fix climate change. We are a denomination of doers, a fellowship full of faithful and vibrant verbs, and the act of taking action is invigorating. Take, for instance, the many action-oriented quotes that we put on inspirational posters and hang on our walls for those days of which we need that little zap, that little boost of inspiration. If you cannot do great things, do small things in a great way, proclaimed Napoleon. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward, preaches Martin Luther King Jr. Things won are done. Joy's soul lies in the doing, writes William Shakespeare. I must lose myself in action, lest I will wither in despair, alludes Alfred Lord Tennyson. Dream as if you will live forever. Live as if you will die tomorrow, winks James Dean. No matter how you feel, get up, dress up, show up, and never give up, says Regina Brett. Wow. How do you feel? How do you feel after hearing just a few of those eloquent one-liners? Revived, maybe? Refreshed? Ready to take on the world, right? Why? Because taking action or even pondering it feels good. And as Nicholas Cohen alluded in our reading this morning, even small and seemingly insignificant positive actions can bring a great amount of happiness. But just as a verb doesn't stand alone in a sentence, before we act, we need to figure out what it is we want and what are our intentions behind it. Are we striving for a change in society or simply collecting karma points? Are we protesting out of passion or as a cry for attention? Are we seeking the favor of God, a God, or of the gods, or are we addressing an inner need to make a difference in this world which we are visiting? Are we working to add meaning to life, or simply striving to make the most of this day we've been blessed with? These are crucial questions to carry with you as you walk out the doors of the fellowship this morning. But be forewarned, the answers may not always be easy. However, they are insightful. Carl Rogers, a minister turned therapist, said it well when analyzing his own circumstances and prospective career change. My reason for deciding to leave the field of religious work was that although questions as to the meaning of life and the possibility of the constructive improvement of life for individuals were of deep interest to me, I could no longer work in a field where I would be required to stagnantly believe in specified religious wording. Instead, I want to find a field in which I can be sure my freedom of thought and action would not be limited. In other words, Rogers wanted to be a verb, not follow in somebody else's words. And he lived this out through a countercultural and humble therapeutic belief that it was his clients, or congregants in our regard, that had everything needed to be their own healers and change makers. that the therapist or minister was simply a traveling companion who could help the individual reveal their inner abilities and access their individual callings. And note that we are all called, regardless of who or what we feel is doing the calling. So whereas I can stand up here and say all sorts of motivating or inspiring things, at the end of the hour, it is you that is el verbo. And you alone that gets to decide why or why not, and whether or whether or not to take action. Rogers' belief system ended up seeding the psychological school of person-centered therapy, or again, for our context here, congregant-centered ministry. It is a belief that you in the pew are the verbs, the light of the world, and that deep inside, you alone have everything necessary to be the change, not to mention the wisdom of what needs to change. Today, our service is about taking action and seeking justice, but there's a crucial first step that we must acknowledge. We must first figure out what it is that we want. Yes, before we can be the change we wish to see in the world and in ourselves, we need to figure out what change is it that we yearn to see. Is it something big? Something such as addressing anti-Semitic or systematic hate and racism? Maybe it's aiding in the fight to change gun laws en route to diminishing violence. Is it political, such as getting a certain somebody elected into office or keeping a certain somebody out? I won't name any names. Is it something simple and small, like buying lunch for a homeless individual that sleeps outside your office on the sidewalk? Again, I quote Nicholas Cohen in assuring that even small and insignificant positive actions can bring great amount of happiness. The questions and reasons behind our verbing are endless indeed, but it is in the answers that we discover our why, and in discovering our why that we awaken to the possibilities of the world. So why did you wake up this morning? That can be a pretty big and intimidating question, but I implore you to ask it, and in answering it, not to take it too seriously, not to take yourself so seriously, because being a verb can and should be enjoyable. Saving the world should be fun. Make it a game. How many lives can you impact on your way home from service this morning? How many smiles can you evoke tomorrow between breakfast and lunch? Action, when done authentically, is exhilarating and enjoyable. God is exhilarating, and that goes for any God or distant deity which you devote yourself to. God is a verb, the light of the world, but you are the bearer of the flame. You have the power to be the change, to be the God, the action that you want to see in the world. Yes, you heard that right. You are divine. And when you choose to accept that, things start happening. And it may start with something as simple as a prayer. Several years back, a book came out called The Prayer of Jabez. And from deep within its covers came a call, a new prescription or path of prayer that you can try out today during the joys and sorrows. No longer shall we pray in an intercessory way, pleading that a higher power make everyone happier, holier, and healthier. But instead, the book said we should pray that we might be the answer, the action, the verb of someone else's day. No longer should we pray peace and healing upon the victims of another mass shooting, but that we might be an agent of change in stopping another one from happening. No longer shall we pray that the world learns to love one another, but instead for opportunities to show our love to the other. No longer shall we limit our prayers to the health of a cancer-stricken friend, but for opportunities instead to show them love and help them heal via a shared meal or conversation. No longer should we take a passive role in asking the universe to address another's issues, but pray in a Carl Rogers way that we will have everything it takes to be the answer to our prayers. Rev Ryan, the woman in 322 wants to see you. She was hoping that you might stop by and say a prayer. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was my first week of work at the University of Louisville Hospital, and my hands started to shake and sweat instantly upon the nurse's request. I had just started work as a chaplain, and as an agnostic by birth and a skeptic by nature who had only recently dove in with the Christian tradition, I'd always been intimidated by the act of public prayer. I still am, actually. Does anybody here love public prayer? All right, Woody's given the joys and concerns today. Yeah, still am. Oh, great, I'll go see her, I responded with a smile of fake confidence, all the while feeling like a doubt-filled hypocrite ready to perform a Holy Sunday homily. Hey there, Miss Rosa. My name is Ryan, and I'm one of the chaplains here. The nurses told me that you wanted to see me. Rosa had been in a bad car accident and was badly burned with a slew of broken bones that kept her from speaking. However, she had use of her right hand and a pencil which had become her new voice. So she started scribbling. Pray for me, she painfully penned on the pad of paper. Now, let it be known that Rosa wasn't just any woman. She was a full-figured African-American Southern Baptist Bible Belt thumping believer with an angelic attitude that only magnified my anxiety. Why is this important, you ask? Because there is no more intimidating individual for a non-confident Christian ministry student to pray for than a big, black, charismatic Baptist woman. Pray for me. I anxiously reread her request and took a deep breath before diving in with an attempt at a prayerful prose. What came next was a scene out of the Ben Stiller movie Meet the Fockers. When Ben's Jewish character Greg is asked to bless the fiance's family meal. Dear God, holy God, you are a good God, a gracious God. Thank you for this day, this blessed day. Day by day. Yes, day by day. Oh, dear Lord, these things I pray. To love thee more clearly, to see thee more nearly, and to follow thee more clearly day by day. Stop! Rosa, bless her heart, didn't even use her pencil to put an end to my half-assed heavenly banter. Instead, she painstakingly pleaded for me to stop mocking the Almighty with my lamentable monologue. I leaned in a little closer so that I might hear her faint words more clearly as she continued. You did it wrong. Ouch. This broken Baptist woman was so distraught by my pathetic attempt at prayer that she dropped her pencil and made use of her fragile vocal cords in order to put an end to the blasphemy. You did it wrong. The words circled in my head. And Rosa was right. I had indeed done prayer wrong. Not because I said the wrong things, but because I said them without passion, without personality, and most importantly, without an action component. Lo and behold, in the days to come, Rosa would become my most prolific seminary professor, teaching me to speak from the heart and with authentic action-oriented language that incites change. And upon her discharge, I thanked her genuinely. Now, to this day, I still struggle with public prayer, which is why Woody is going to be doing the offering and joys and concerns today. However, I now realize that it's not about words. It's about verbs and the emotions and intentions behind them. Thus, think of prayer as a petition, a promise that you are willing and able to take an active role in answering what it is that you are praying for. And know that it doesn't matter the words that you use as long as they're genuinely you. And that you throw a self-directed verb in the mix. Yes, think of prayer as a proactive dream for a better tomorrow, steeped in hope and rich in reassurance. But know that, as Langston Hughes alludes, the truly dangerous among us are those who dream with open eyes. Those who altruistically ask to be a part of the answer. Those who aren't afraid to accept their participatory role in this thing we call life. And with that, imagine what it is that you're going to do as you leave this sanctuary this morning, because it's going to be something beautiful.